When I think of the word hood, I think of a person, a place, and perhaps even a thing. I'm Sir Creepsta, and welcome to Muhlenberg County Ghost Stories from the Hood. So, sit back, relax, grab some snacks, and be terrified by yet another ghost story from the Hood. Several years back, while visiting with my father, he would share with me a tale that took place in his early preteen years. It was simply mind-blowing. It was a story of two notorious local gunmen, one black, one white. The two men terrorized the neighborhood of Central City, Kentucky for years with a complete lack of remorse for their fellow men. They were ruthless and were well known primarily for their weapons of choice, which were none other than a pair of pearl-handled 38 specials that they didn't hesitate to use when need be. The period was somewhere in the mid-1940s. The laws then were loose. Many of their victims were mainly gamblers, wife beaters, and alcoholic bums. Were never reported to the local police. They were simply turned a blind eye to by the locals, in fear of what might happen to them if the word got out that they were the ones that turned them in, or better words yet, rather snitched on them. According to my pops, the exact number of lives that the two men unlawfully took was unknown. All they could tell me was it was around, or rumored to be around, somewhere in the double digits. Although this story shook me to the core, and understandably so, it wasn't the number of bodies that the two men had under their belt that bothered me. It was where they chose to dig the shallow graves and bury them, which was none other than the location of the old colored grade school, also known as the Hill. But before I go any further, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share my videos on my channel. Also, click on the little bell icon so that you can stay in the loop and be notified each and every time I drop a brand new video. Several years after the passing of the notorious John Render and his Caucasian killer associate, whose name my pops was unable to recall, the Hill took a dark turn and became a place rumored to be one of the most haunted places in the neighborhood by the locals, due to all of the paranormal events that took place according to those who happened to live nearby. They often spoke amongst themselves of the ghostly figures that had been seen wandering around the cursed grounds, as well as the tales of disembodied voices echoing throughout the woods, where several bodies had been buried. The grounds frightened the locals nearby so much that I can recall as a teenager, many of them telling me and my peers not to be caught in the woods after dark, in fear of the spirits that were rumored to lurk within them and its cursed grounds. But it wasn't just their warnings that bothered me and my friends. It was a story from one of the elder locals that scared us the most. It was probably the reason behind the hauntings and the paranormal activity that centered around the Hill. According to the elder, she had been told by her elderly family members that the grounds had once belonged to Native American Indians many, many years ago, and the grounds were very, very sacred to them. And that more than likely, because of the many bodies buried there by the two killers, the area had become cursed by the spirits of the Native Americans. Located next to the cursed woods was the old colored elementary school, which had been abandoned right after the school in the county had become segregated. The only part of the school used for a short period of time was the gymnasium. Otherwise, the building was just the remains of a historical monument and learning institution that once was a very important part of the neighborhood. Next door to the gymnasium/school was a smaller building, which according to my pops and the locals was used primarily for the younger students up to around the 3rd grade. I recall as a kid going inside it many, many times, and I was always met with the feeling that something dark had taken place within its walls, soon after it become abandoned. It was always damp, wet, and overcome with a strange, nauseating odor that overwhelmed us whenever I and my friends dared to venture inside it. We never stay inside it for very long, sensing the dark, unseen presence that lurked within. Although I, my peers, and several others spoke about the feelings we had while inside the creepy school, up to then there had never been any stories from anyone, including myself, about anything supernatural or paranormal happening within inside its walls. This would all change around 1997. For it was then that the building would show its menacing secrets to one of the local men who lived in the neighborhood. According to the man, whom I just called Pistol Pete, it was a rainy night, and after having gotten off from work, he stopped by a club in the hood called the Dog Pound. After a few hours of having a few shots and about 4 beers, Pistol Pete decided to call it a night and go home. It was a little after midnight, and while sitting inside, he wasn't aware of the storm taking place outside the building. So, rather than weather the storm, Pistol Pete said his goodbyes and struck out running towards his house, which is only a few minutes away from the Dog Pound. He raced down the hill towards Gish Park, jumped the ditch located by the park, and ran up the hill behind the projects. After running, Pete was exhausted. It was still raining like crazy, so he decided to take shelter in the smaller school building located at the top of the hill. This decision would turn into one of the worst ones he'd ever made, according to Pistol Pete. Having been inside a dark, damp building for a couple of minutes, he was immediately overtaken by the strange odor that reeked throughout it. But regardless of the smell and the eerie feeling he felt inside the building, Pistol Pete said he decided to smoke a cigarette while the rain subsided. So he took out his lighter, flicked it, and went into instant shock for what he saw as light illuminated the walls of the building. To his disbelief, what he could only describe as blood, based on the color and smell, ran down all 4 walls of the room that he was in. This prompted him to drop his cigarette, burst out the door, and run the rest of the way to his home, which is only a few minutes away. Once he had made it safely inside his home, he recalled bursting through that door and running straight to the bathroom so they could take off his rain-soaked clothes. After a couple of minutes in the bathroom, his girlfriend would call him out, asking him where had he been, stating that he had tracked something red on the floor from the doorway to the bathroom. At that moment, Pete looked down at his shoes and noticed that they were completely covered in blood. But he had unknowingly gotten on his shoes when he was inside the old school building. A feeling of terror ran through his mind as the hair on his arm stood up, for it was at that moment that he knew exactly where the bloody shoe prints were from. It was at the precise moment, too, that Pistol Pete said he had become a firm believer in the supernatural and all the stories that have been passed down from the locals about the hauntings that are rumored to be associated with the hill. Up until his death, Pistol Pete said that he never stepped foot back inside the old school building again. That's all for tonight, folks. I hope you enjoyed this story. I am what I am, but what I'm not, I will never be. I'm Sir Creepsta, and until next time, stay terrified. Ha 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 ha.